Sometimes the most dangerous things are hidden in plain sight. Eminem, only the greatest American rapper of all time, wrote songs about hidden abuse, about how his mother frequently took him to doctors and hospitals for tests. In his song, Cleaning Out My Closet, going through public housing systems, victim of Munchausen syndrome, my whole life I was made to believe I was sick when I wasn't until I grew up and blew up. So what is Munchausen syndrome, and why should we care how it informs the abuse narrative in criminal and family court cases? I'm Carrie Drobin, criminal defense attorney, multi-published award-winning true crime author. This is Crime Bites. Munchausen syndrome. What is it? It's a rare form of child abuse in which a parent, usually a mother, causes her own child to become sick to get attention for herself. Officially, it's known as factitious disorder, imposed on self or others. It's a mental health condition in which a person repeatedly pretends to be sick or make someone else sick to gain attention, sympathy, or a sense of control. It's like emotional manipulation taken to a physical extreme. For some people, just being around medical settings and treatments and attention can create a sense of importance or validation. So when someone makes another person ill, typically a caregiver, usually a parent, who harms a dependent child to claim the role of caretaker, then we call it Munchausen syndrome by proxy, or factitious disorder imposed on another. And tragically, in these cases, children often become the pawns, enduring painful, sometimes life-threatening treatments, surgeries, and years of deception. So roughly 1,000 new cases of Munchausen by proxy are confirmed each year in the United States alone. But it's widely believed that many more go undiagnosed, making it a hidden crisis in the healthcare system. So this disorder can impact everything from child custody cases to emergency room diagnoses and even film and media portrayals. So many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Gypsy Rose Blanchard, whose story inspired multiple documentaries, including Mommy Dead, Dearest, The Act, which is now a Hulu series, which was subjected to years of fabricated illness by her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard, who convinced doctors and even neighbors that her daughter, Gypsy, was terminally ill. The mother claimed Gypsy suffered from leukemia, a muscular dystrophy, and other serious illnesses, and the result? Gypsy was confined to a wheelchair, fed through a feeding tube, given countless medications, none of which she needed. The mother's manipulations went so far that she shaved Gypsy's head and faked medical records to keep her daughter looking the part of a very sick child. So why did she do it? For sympathy, financial benefit, control. Gypsy eventually took matters into her own hands, conspiring with her boyfriend to murder her mother, right? Munchausen by proxy cases don't always end with such visible violence, but they often leave deep and unseen psychological scars. So contrast Gypsy's story with the ongoing saga of Maya Kowalski, the young girl diagnosed with complex regional pain syndrome, or CRPS, an extremely painful condition. Her plight was depicted in the documentary Taking Care of Maya. So Maya's mother, Beata Kowalski, sought extensive treatment for her daughter's condition, believing it was necessary to ease Maya's pain. But when the Kowalskis went to Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital in Florida, things took a dark turn. Doctors became suspicious that the mother was suffering from Munchausen by proxy, alleging that she was exaggerating or fabricating her daughter's symptoms, and the hospital took custody of Maya, suspecting abuse. So after months of legal battles, tragically, Maya's mother took her own life. And Maya was eventually returned to her father, and today the Kowalski family is suing the hospital, claiming severe injustice. So her story shows how complicated it can be to discern between a genuine concern for a child's health and manipulation for attention. So the line between advocacy and exaggeration is blurry. Now, I've dealt with the complexities of MVP and family court custody battles. So imagine being a judge on one side, right? There's a parent who appears devoted to their child's well-being, and on the other, doctors suggest that the child's illnesses may have been fabricated. So how can they know who to believe, right? When is it critical that a child is rescued from their parent? And when is that parent actually doing the rescuing? So take the case of Olivia Gant, a 7-year-old American girl who died after ongoing medical abuse by her mother, Kelly Renee Turner Gant, in what was deemed to be a case of Munchausen by proxy. So Turner Gant had initially taken the girl to the hospital for a case of severe constipation. And after this was treated successfully and Gant was sent home, her mother claimed that Gant was unable to consume food, leading to numerous surgeries, the implementation of feeding tubes, and finally an intravenous tube that fed nutrients directly into the child's veins. And the constant hospital visits and surgeries left the child at times in a wheelchair and bedridden, weakened by an anti-seizure medication that her mother had convinced a doctor to prescribe her. The little girl died after her mother swapped the child's usual doctors, who had refused to sign a do not resuscitate order for the girl, for another doctor willing to sign the order. So she was forum shopping for doctors. And this allowed the mother to have all of Gant's feeding tubes removed. So Gant was placed in hospital care, where she died from apparent intestinal failure in 2017. The mother, who by then went by the name Kelly Turner, was then convicted in 2022 and sentenced to 10 years in prison. We have another case. Author Julie Gregory, in her memoir Sickened, a memoir of a Munchausen by proxy childhood, reflects on her past and always says it was always doctor's visits that come to mind, right? And this is what she says: we had migraine headaches, we had sore throats, and then when we had intestinal issues, she was forced to drink barium meals. Always by her side was her mother. Her sole purpose seemed to be, as this author remembers her, getting to the bottom of the sickness, right? So what is the bottom of the sickness? The psychology of the condition itself is hearing manipulation at play and intentional use of love and care as a tool for harm. It's often insidious, it's subtle, it's leaving psychological scars rather than visible ones. Victims of it experience a unique kind of suffering as doctors and courts and families struggle to differentiate between care and control, between genuine advocacy and dangerous manipulation. And at its worst, it has fatal consequences. So having had cases that have involved MSBP, I've had to analyze the deep-seated emotional and psychological need that drives these people to seek attention or validation through the suffering of someone else, typically their own child. So I look for what lies beneath, the pathology of the perpetrator, right? Being the center of attention due to a heroic caregiving role can often give them a sense of worth and validation. They crave that sympathy and emotional support they receive from medical staff, family, and even strangers, right? And the caregiver often controls the narrative of the child's illness. So they decide what doctors are told and what treatment is prescribed, and giving them a sense of control over the situation. Many perpetrators of MSBP show signs of narcissism and may view themselves as deserving of admiration or empathy due to their perceived sacrifices for their child's well-being. Some may even have characteristics of borderline personality disorder, which are marked by intense emotions and a fear of abandonment. They may believe that by taking a child who's dependent on them, ensuring loyalty and attention and reinforcing their worth. In some cases, a parent with MSBP can have a personal history of Munchausen syndrome, which involves faking or inducing illnesses in themselves, right? They may transfer that behavior onto their child when their own condition no longer seems to elicit the same kind of sympathy or attention. So many of these cases, these perpetrators have histories of neglect, abuse, or abandonment in their own unmet needs for attention, and they can be unconsciously believe that by keeping their child dependent on them, they can solidify that secure bond. So it becomes really complicated in a legal court case because it's up to the lawyer to advocate for their client, but also to sort of differentiate between what is real and what is fake, and maybe to bring in experts that can explain this, right? Explain like what is this? They need to seem to recreate or want to recreate that drama, high stakes situation that is often comes with a serious illness in a hospital. Right? It's sort of urgent. It's masking deeper insecurities, life struggles. And this is what the lawyer needs to educate the court system on. So being the mother of a sick child, for instance, gives that person meaning and significance that they might not find anywhere else. So in Gypsy Rose Blanchard's case, the mother created an identity for herself as a selfless mother, which seemed to be deep-seated needs for attention and validation. And Gypsy was granted parole in September after serving only 8 years in prison for her mother's murder because the court recognized the extreme abuse that she endured throughout her life at the hands of her mother. So it became a mitigating factor. So it's really complicated when advocating for this, right? It begs the question with the Menendez brothers, who also alleged abuse at the hands of their father, but their narrative wasn't believed, right? It was granted it wasn't MSBP, but it was what if the Menendez brothers were sisters, right? What if it was the Menendez sisters? Would they have received the same kind of treatment, do you think? I mean, do you think it's possible that maybe their case would have been better or more believed if they had been girls rather than boys? It's an interesting question. And the problem with Munchausen by proxy, as I hope I've illustrated here, is it's really difficult to differentiate that fine line. And so as an advocate or as a lawyer with a client who comes to me and says, hey, I think my wife is fabricating illnesses and keeping my child sick, and I want to advocate for sole custody of this person, it becomes really tricky because there isn't anything in the law that is a defining line, that says this is Munchausen by proxy, this is a real fabricated illness. So it becomes really complicated and difficult for a judge. And it's sort of that fine line of being an educator, being a counselor, and also trying to understand the pathology of the person either on the other side or my own client. So anyway, thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, please share, like, and subscribe to my channel, and check out my website, carriedrobin.com. Meanwhile, stay informed, stay vigilant, and above all, stay safe.